This video is being released on July 3rd, 2026, the 35th anniversary of the release of Terminator 2 Judgment Day. One of the most groundbreaking, influential, and just straight up amazing movies of all time, Terminator 2 remains one of the best movies of all time 35 years later, and is considered by me and many others to be the greatest action film of all time. But really, why is that? What makes Terminator 2 so special, and why is this so highly regarded by critics and general audiences alike all across the world? So today I'll be talking about Terminator 2 Judgment Day, why it's so amazing and unique, and why it is still the greatest action film of all time. Okay, brief plot synopsis in case you haven't seen the film already or haven't seen it in a while, but set 11 years after the first film, it follows a Terminator that is sent back in time to kill John Connor, the future leader of the human resistance, as a child to prevent him and his group of opposing the evil company Skynet. But the human resistance sends a less advanced Terminator back in time to stop him, as they fight against each other to achieve their goals. It's essentially the same plot of the first Terminator film from 1984, but enough is added and changed in order to make it grander and better as well. Let's first talk about the beginning of the film. The opening scene shows the apocalyptic world run by machines, as the few humans that survived fight back against these evil machines. Already, you can see the step up in budget and scale when compared with the first film. The original Terminator was solid and handled its limited scope very well, but never really showed you the full scale of destruction that Skynet and their machines caused. But you really see it now, and this also shows that this isn't a simple follow-up to the first film, but bigger and better on every scale as well. Alongside the opening scene, the subsequent 4 scenes each establish the 4 main characters of the film early on, and their main character traits and motivations as well. Let's first talk about John Connor himself. Your average young boy, albeit a lot more mischievous and crafty. You see in the first scene of him that he's not one to follow rules and listen to others easily. It also has a habit of causing a lot of mischief as well, and can handle himself pretty well. Although he doesn't yet have the traits of a leader of humanity yet, he still does have the potential as we see later on. Now let's talk about the 2 machines. First, Arnold Schwarzenegger's T-800. A completely different machine compared to the cold-hearted killer from the first one. The opening scene of him is nearly identical to his introduction in the first film, other than a different location. It brings you back to a familiar scene in order to establish the similarities between the two, but also something about this feels off, as we learn later on. Next up, we have Robert Patrick as the new Terminator T-1000. Early in this film, we don't know much about him. He just steals an officer's uniform and takes his car. But he seems early on to be the machine meant to be saving John, considering the T-800 was the villain of the last one, and this one seems more heroic, but this changes as we'll see later on. And finally, we have Sarah Connor herself. One of the only returning characters from the first film. She was deemed insane after the events of the first movie and put in a maximum security psychiatric hospital, despite us, the audience, knowing she was right. But Sarah's much more confident and stronger in this film, as we see, and later on we'll see much more of her and her action as well. The opening 20 or so minutes of the film really does a great job of establishing the stakes and central characters of the narrative, which makes the film so much better as it goes on. Once the action finally starts, as the T-1000 starts to hunt down John Connor, as the T-800 tries to save him, is where we get to see why this film is so amazing and influential. Although basically everyone knows that the T-1000 is the villain of the film still tries to make you believe he's the hero until the very last moment in the first shootout of the film. Cops are meant to protect others, but the film subverts your expectations once he starts to try to gun down John. Honestly, not surprised considering he's pretending to be in the LAPD. The truck and motorcycle chase scene is one of the most iconic action pieces of all time that's referenced in numerous sources of media constantly. And it is really a perfect chase scene. Non-stop action that never feels fake or phony whatsoever, and considering the stakes, you're on the edge of your seat until the very end once the good guys escape. I'm a little bit into the video now, but I still haven't talked whatsoever about the man behind this film himself, that being the king of the world himself, James Cameron. Cameron is an enormous reason the whole entirety of this film works, and without him, Terminator 2 wouldn't work whatsoever. It helps they created the original source material and was given a much larger budget and control to go crazy, but he understands what makes an action film work. He may not be the best scriptwriter, but he understands how to balance high-stake action and slow scenes with drama and occasional comedy as well. Most action movies suffer from the problem of lacking the action they promise and having to deal with flat and forgettable characters as well, something of which Terminator 2 never suffers from. You're never bored or overwhelmed in any part of the film, the percentage of action being pretty consistent to the percentage of slower scenes. Although we have already seen some parts and characters of this world before, they're still developed and evolved enough that appeals to both fans of the first film and newcomers alike. Even in his weaker projects, James Cameron's action is top-notch and like no other, with Terminator 2's action and the film as a whole being, in my books, the highlight of his directing career. You can see fingerprints of Terminator 2 in practically every action movie since then, and in other genres like sci-fi and superhero films. It's just that influential. But what was so groundbreaking about Terminator 2 when it was released? This is one pretty obvious thing: the T-1000's true liquid metal body and the special effects that helped create it. James Cameron had used pretty similar technology in order to create the memorable water tentacle from his previous film The Abyss, but this was on a much bigger scale on a bigger film, and it was much more prevalent throughout. The 90s were the start of CGI being more prevalent in movies, with Jurassic Park and Toy Story further showing the extent this technology can be taken to. But Terminator 2 was the first big movie that large audiences saw that used this technology. With the help of some practical effects, 40 different shots of the T-1000 and its special liquid metal form are used all throughout the film from beginning to the end, and it served as a huge inspiration in the future of how to use CGI and special effects like this in the future, alongside its practical effects as well. We would see Cameron and crew develop this technology further with the Avatar films, but this was just the beginning of his use of CGI in his films. Have they aged the best? Honestly, for the most part they have. But full body shots and Robert Patrick morphing in and out between forms don't look the best and look pretty simplistic by today's standards. But given that this was the very first film to use technology like this, you have to give them credit. Hey, some of it still looks better than some of the big studio blockbusters to this very day, and that's saying something. But this liquid metal CGI was groundbreaking during its time and served as the foundation for CGI effects in the future. Without Terminator 2 and the technology behind it, who knows how the future of computer-generated images would look like today. I talked about the characters at the beginning of the film, but I want to return back to them for a little while. Specifically, the character arc that Sarah has in this film and the relationship between John and this film's T-800. Well, let's talk about Sarah first. No longer in this film is she a helpless woman being hunted down by a rampaging machine, but instead a badass hero fighting to save the future. You see, pretty early on she's a lot colder and ruthless in this film, especially when she's fighting against men twice her size in a psychiatric hospital, but she still holds on her own and never needs the help of a man to save her. Although seeing the T-800 brings back traumatic flashbacks from the machine from the first film, she later learns it's different and helpful in this one, and with the help of her son, team up to survive. Sarah feels completely different from the first film, and sort of shares many traits of the T-800 that hunted her down. Sarah is willing to kill Miles Dyson, the scientist that unknowingly helps create the machines that cause the titular Judgment Day in the future, even though he's basically an innocent man. The scene where she's shooting at him and gets closer to killing him shows how much she has changed from the events of the first film, and how despite her best intentions, can still cause serious harm. But her son really helps her, the two connecting closer as they realize how much each of them care for each other as the two try to become a normal parent and child to each other. James Cameron really knows how to craft female protagonists, as we also see with Ellen Ripley in Aliens, and honestly, there's a reason they're so iconic to this very day. Speaking of John, let's talk about him and his relationship with the T-800. John's been basically alone his whole life, and never had a good father figure in his life whatsoever. Although pretty bizarre, the T-800 serves that role pretty well. It will always protect him, obey him, and more specifically, never hurt him, essentially being the perfect parental figure in his life. But we all know this relationship can't last forever. We see the T-800 become more and more human as the movie progresses, adopting more and more traits that John teaches him and understanding what makes humans so unique, which is what makes the ending so heartbreaking. The T-800 has to sacrifice himself in order to prevent his machine body from being used in the future by Skynet or other evil people out there. You know how this will affect John, which is why this being the final scene hits so hard. There could have been another scene or two at the end, but this ends the film on a very satisfying note as John and Sarah are now safe. This could have been a perfect ending to the franchise even though it wasn't, but not a single future Terminator film was close to being as good as either of the first two Terminator films. You're trying to do basically the exact same thing as Terminator 2, a new machine trying to kill someone throughout different times, but don't even come close to being as good as this film. Copying a formula over and over again and expecting it to work the exact same every time won't make one masterpiece after another, but instead will just create a bland formula that everyone gets tired and fed up with. It's not the most complex film out there, but Terminator 2 Judgment Day excels at everything it strives to be and more. It's a revolutionary action film with a lot of substance, a great sci-fi film that establishes a lot of world building very effectively that everyone can understand easily, one of the greatest sequels and follow-up films even today, and technically speaking helped revolutionize the film industry with its CGI effects that we see in practically every single film today. It's no surprise Terminator 2 was the highest grossing film of 1991 despite its R rating. It just appeals to basically everyone out there. Go and find someone out there who doesn't like this film. This is one of the most inoffensive films out there that no matter who you are, you can still connect to throughout your entire life. James Cameron is one of the best, maybe even the best when it comes to films like these, as he understands what makes a film such an appealing movie that can connect to so many. Despite being 35 years old, and will only get older as time goes by, it still holds up very well, one of the best aging films of all time and especially of the 90s. Terminator 2 Judgment Day is the best action movie of all time even 35 years later, and is a masterpiece of the genre that pushes the boundaries of what you would expect from a film like this, and an incredible movie to experience whether it's your first time, or even if it would be your 100th time watching this gem of a film.
Terminator 2 Judgment Day. This time he's back. For good.
Trust me.
Anyways, y'all, thank you so much for watching this video to the very end. If you like this video, I have a video all about James Cameron and his entire career, talking about every single one of his movies, including Terminator 2. Talking about the original Terminator, Titanic, all of the Avatar films, and everything in between. Also, if you like me to talk about this action movie, you'd probably also like to hear me talk about the best action movie you've never heard of. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you all next time.